So today's topic is going to be music. Is it a hobby or is it your living? Or maybe it's something somewhere in between. It is December 3rd already, and through the month of December over the years, I wear this hat. I think this hat is ridiculous and I think it's funny. And when I'm out and about around town, if I go into a restaurant or I go get coffee or I'm shopping or whatever, um, lately I've been at the auto parts store. um, it's funny reaction to get from people, even if they're just driving around and they happen to look over and see me, and people start laughing or they point or whatever, and I think it's just fun. So it's December, so I'm gonna wear my December elf hat just because it is so ridiculous. I cannot not wear it. Today is Ozzy Osbourne's birthday. Did you know that? I forgot to make him a cake, but he is 76 years old today. Old Oz man, Ozzy Osbourne. Um, so there you can tell all your friends it's Ozzy Osbourne's birthday today. Music, is it a living or is it just a hobby? I think for many people it's a hobby, and maybe sometimes it's kind of in between those two worlds where it's a hobby and then they make a little bit of money doing that. Um, they're not doing it. I'm saying they, like that doesn't include anybody that's listening, um, because I used to be part of that group as well. So hobby versus doing music for a living, and depending on the the direction or the situation. That's what I mean. The situation of people will be uh, will be determining kind of what your mindset is towards what you're doing. I think that if two things that I want to say. First of all, James Harrison, who may or may not be watching, I'm guessing that he either is or will join in or watch the replay because James is a longtime supporter of the Fred Fisher Show. uh, um, James Harrison does these um, influential drummer videos that are, they're just a minute to a few minutes long, and he's been doing this influential drummers revisited things from several years ago when he was doing those, and he's resharing that content. To my surprise, about 2 weeks ago, he wanted to do this influential drummer thing, and he said it wasn't part of the original thing that he did, but he said inspiring drummers, and he mentioned me, which was pretty cool. Pretty cool. So thanks again, James, for doing that. But one thing that he said in his influential drummer thing was he watched me go through this transformation, and James was part of helping that transformation happen, where I just made a decision in my life that I was going to make music my full-time job, my source of income was all going to be from music. And so there was a whole process to that. And the beginning of that process seemed really out of reach and really unrealistic and really impossible. And I got tired of being around people who told me that that was going to be an impossibility, because I had mentioned, I don't know if it was last week or in one of the more recent shows. Oh, it was when I was talking about stop calling the stage an office, because I spent so much time being miserable in the landscaping industry. Not that every day was miserable, but I found myself so many times while I was working landscaping and sweating in 100-some-degree weather and just being filthy dirty, and my mind wasn't in a great place, and my finances were all over the map too. So that was there was a lot of discouraging things that were happening, and I would spend my time a lot of times working by myself and wondering when in my life is it going to happen that I can only just worry about playing drums. Like what's Where's my exit out of this misery that I was in? And I'm serious, I was miserable. I was not I wasn't living the life that I thought that I was supposed to be living. I wasn't doing the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing, and just generally unhappy. So, James explained watching this transformation happen in my life, to going from being a landscape contractor to a full-time musician. So that was pretty cool to be recognized for my efforts and what I'm doing. And I'm still working on trying to improve my situation all the time. And that's been discussed many times already, and I'm sure I'll discuss it more as we go along, probably even more with some of the topics I want to hit today. So is music your hobby or is it your living? So when I was miserable, music was definitely a hobby that I was doing. It was something that only happened on the weekend. It was something that happened occasionally. Excuse me. There was no consistency to what I was doing. And somewhere in all of that, I started teaching drum lessons again, and I would have maybe 5 students, sometimes 8. I had a moment where I hit 10, and I thought, oh, this is a lot of extra commitment on top of all my other commitments with landscaping, was to dedicate, 5 to 6 hours a week in teaching drum lessons. And it was a nice way to supplement my income, I guess, with a few students. And I had enjoyment teaching and being in my studio that I built in this environment. And I would find myself sometimes, my mind would wander off while I was teaching, thinking, if I could just do this as my job, this was, excuse me, is way better than digging in the dirt. But I thought, there's no way that there's 20 people in Boise that need to take drum lessons, let alone, no way is there 40 people that want to take drum lessons or need to take drum lessons. Or why in the world would they drive to my location? My location for many people is pretty far out of the way. And I had a discussion yesterday with one of my students' parents, because they drive over from Eagle. Well, over half of my students that I have drive over from Eagle, and I have a handful that drive in from Nampa. That's a lot of commitment to come see me for a half hour every week. Even people who live in Meridian, we live here. The people who live here know there's no quick way of getting anywhere. This urban sprawl that we have, and this not only is traffic bad, but it seems like every mile and a half there's road construction going on, preventing us from getting anywhere timely. So you got to work that into your schedule. So I was really at this kind of tipping point in my life where I was nearing the decision to just not do music at all. No music for Fred. Try to make my landscape business work. Give up on my dreams that I had since I was 10 years old. And that'll wreck with your mind. That messes with your mind. It's a terrible place to be where you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And when I talked I think it was last week or the week before, about the stage isn't an office, I want to be clear that that's not a cut on anybody that has an office job, because some people, my goodness, sorry. Some people thrive in the office environment. That's where they want to be. That was their goal. It wasn't my goal. So that to me is why it was miserable. Some people just thrive in that business environment, or cubicles, or whatever it is. Wasn't for me to be in my office and then to be out working and being miserable. James, I'm glad you're here. I was just talking about you. Music, hobby, passion, living for about 40 years, eventually back to part-time or a hobby. It's a roller coaster ride, but what a ride. We'll start to get back on that coaster again. James, the world of music needs you, my friend. And I really you and I've talked on the phone or even in person. Like, uh, James and I have had some really amazing discussions over the years, and whenever James is in town, we get together and have lunch or dinner or just hang out here at the house. Um, James had some changes in his life, leaving Boise, and when you have so many things going for you and you're doing all these things, you feel like that's your identity, and I feel the same way. And James felt like part of his identity had been lost in all of that. Beginning with the crummy shutdown of the world. Not to get into that, but people want to argue over if that was real or not, and what might be the motivation behind all of that garbage. But that turned a lot of people's worlds upside down. I don't think any of us were out of harm's way necessarily in all of that. And sometimes it's hard to get back into things. So, yeah, I think, for me, I felt like being a landscape contractor was becoming my identity, and I did not want that. The scene in Wayne's World where he says, "I've got a collection of hairnets and name tags." That was me. I had all these. I worked places that I could easily just quit if the need arises to go on the road and drum, and I did that a handful of times. Working at a movie theater, and I'm like, I'm off to Florida. See you in a year. Man, I don't know what's going on here. I worked at a rental car company at the airport washing cars, and I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going on the road. And then I got to where I was working for another landscape company, mowing lawns and things like that, and I'm out of here. I'm going on the road. So I had a lot of those moments, and then I thought, I could mow lawns myself, and then I get to keep all the money, and then if I want to leave whenever, then I can just go. Actually, it didn't really work out that way, because you think you're the boss and you're in charge of the schedule. Well, guess what? When you have a bunch of people that are counting on you to mow their lawn every week, you can't just up and quit and leave. James says, you sound like me with your voice today. Yeah, I've got a little of that morning voice going, so I'm trying to clear it up here with if I had a coffee sponsorship, I could say thanks to I don't even know what brand of coffee this is. Let's see. Working through that. What was I saying? Oh, having my own business and thinking that would give me all this freedom. It was actually, I built myself a prison. And I'm serious about that. I built myself a prison having that business. You wouldn't think that was the case, but man, it sure was. I know I built it. I put it together step by step, brick by brick. So let me go through some of these points that I wrote out yesterday. I had two columns. One was, asking these questions and then deciding which side of the aisle you're on, so to speak, with is music a Matt Muckle. My buddy Matt is here. Matt, I had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope that you did too. And I've got my December hat on because it's what I do every year. Through December is wear this goofy hat. Matt, I hope you are doing so well and just having a great time. And every time I see Matt Muckle pop up on Facebook, I'm like, what is Matt up to today? I love it. So music, is it a hobby, or is it your living, or is it somewhere in between? The somewhere in between thing was something that popped in my head just as I started this show today, so I had made a little side note. Because I think it's two different mindsets. So what I was getting at is, like I just said, I kind of likened to, I started my own landscape business, and I felt like I built my own prison. I really built myself a deep trench that was hard to get out of. And with Mr. James Harrison's help, I was able to leave that behind. But it took a few years, and it took really on purpose thinking. So as I was making that transition, and I was finally could see light at the end of the tunnel. I've mentioned Matt Starr many times because Matt was pretty instrumental in encouraging me in all of this. And Matt and I really hit it off. Gosh, it's been 10 or 11 years ago now, but I played drums on a record called X Drive, Morning John. And so the X Drive record had me on drums, Keith St. John vocals, and James Lomenzo on bass. And this guitar player from Oregon, Jeremy, put that all together in the studio with Andy Johns. If you don't know who the Andy Johns producer guy is, worked a lot with Led Zeppelin, he and his brother Glenn Johns. Joseph, thank you. Yes, it's my goofy hat, and I wear it on purpose all December because I think when people see it, they just can't. You have to smile. You have to smile. So it's my goofy elf hat, and yep, that's what I wear all December long. And my students will know when they walk in today because I will be wearing my goofy elf hat. Yeah. So what was I saying? Matt Starr. I recorded this record called X Drive. Keith St. John, James Lomenzo on bass. Yeah, I said all that. At any rate, so of course I knew a lot about James Lomenzo and his body of work and things that he played on, and here I found myself making music with James, and we did a music video and all of that kind of stuff, and had a record deal with Frontiers Records, and that's a whole another long story. That thing kind of fell apart, no fault of my own, or just the guy in charge of it was new to the business and really didn't know what to do with it. So that was but anyway, that's how I met Matt Starr, is because he played in a band with Keith St. John called Burning Rain, and I thought Matt's drumming was cool, and so I checked it out and friended Matt. And Matt was teaching drum lessons. It was called Matt Starr's Music Academy. And Matt was playing with Ace Frehley. And then somewhere in that whole mix was the same time that Matt got the gig playing with Mr. Big and went on tour with Mr. Big. And there was something about Matt that drew me to him. And I don't know, maybe it was just divine intervention, but I connected with Matt, and Matt was doing all the same things I was, but just on the next level of music and who he was playing with. And I kind of thought, man, this guy's really cool. He now I got to move my leg. He's really cool. Cool guy to talk to. And right around that same time, he started doing this coaching thing. And so that's when I connected with Matt. So Matt has a pretty large influence on my decision-making paradigm, which was great. So as I was putting all of these things together and talking to different people, like I mentioned James before, Matt Starr, why is his name escaping me? Man, if only I could think. He's one of the producers for the Eagles. Plays music with Timothy B. Schmidt. I don't know why his name's escaping me. Anyway, I had a really good meeting with him, and he gave me a lot of good advice too. So as I was going through all of this stuff, I started playing with Cliff Miller, and Cliff and I played in a rock band called Cure for the Fall. And then Mark, good morning. Yes, the hat. The hat is an attention getter. Played in a rock band with Cliff called Cure for the Fall. And then, Brandon, I'll read your comment in 1 second. Glad you're here. So we had this rock band, and we were trying to make things happen, and the quality of what we did was pretty high up the chain there, and we were getting some radio play in other markets, not in Boise, which was really great, and we were playing really cool shows. But again, it was just like this fight to leave the land of hobbyist to the land of this is what I do for a living. And so somewhere in all of that, Cliff made a decision to start his own country band because he felt like country music maybe had a bigger audience and something that would be a little easier to work at. And so he started doing that. And so then me and Alfred Deverona started playing with Cliff and getting his country thing really off the ground and running. So Cliff was watching all this stuff happen, and this just popped out of my mouth one day. And as I said it, I realized I'm saying this to Cliff, and I need to make this kind of my mantra, is if you woke up tomorrow morning and you had to rely solely 100% on music as your living, how intentional would your life become? Like, how motivated would you be to make that happen? Because everything else that you had to rely on for income totally disappeared. You just woke up. Now what? Now what do I do? And so as I told that to Cliff, I was like, I'm kind of on my way to this whole thing, and now I really need to really get super laser focused. And then that's when I called Matt Starr, and I kind of gave him an update on where I was. And I said, I have this many students. I just need a few more, and I have this other thing to do. And I said, I could just see it in the lane next to me. And Matt just simply said, he goes, well, then just step over in that lane. Like, what are you waiting for? Like, cut ties with this other thing and be done with it. And there you go. And it was like Matt reached to the phone and kind of slapped me across the face a little bit and shook me and said, wake up. There's the exit right here. And that's exactly what I did. I just went, oh, Matt, you're right. So that's exactly what I did. I said, I'm done doing this garbage. I'm out of my prison. And once I actually committed to doing that, those extra few students I needed to meet my financial commitment happened within like 12 days. It was really fast. And it's maintained that for several years now, which is awesome. Brandon, what does Brandon say? Brandon said, happy Tuesday, Fred. Hope you're healing well. Yes, I am. Thank you. I'm currently in a hotel room in South Georgia learning songs for Kiss Cancer Goodbye this weekend before getting to play with... Dude, you're going to play with Anton Fig? That's awesome. Is anybody from Kiss going to be there? Are you going to be with Ace? Because I know that you've played with Ace, and I think I saw you... Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I've seen you in years past play with I think Paul Stanley, or maybe it was Gene Simmons, or both. I don't remember. Brandon, you do cool stuff. It's awesome. Anton Fig. Wasn't Anton the drummer for Ace Frehley? I think that he was. But that's, dude, killer. Thomas, I'm glad you're here, and I'm sorry that you're hurt, my friend. Miss having you here. So, yeah, don't worry about me, buddy. I know you'll be back when you're ready. All right, I probably better start whittling away at my list here. So, yeah, that was the thing. As I told Cliff, I said, if you woke up tomorrow morning and all you had to do was rely on income from music for your living, like, how laser focused would you get with that? And so Cliff and I talk about that quite a bit, and Cliff has been on this constant climb to where his day job that he has is less and less and less and less and less and less, and music is more and more and more and more. And I think for us musicians who live in that world, our mindset's a little bit different. No Ace this year, but Eric Singer and Bruce Anton played on Ace's 78 solo record in all of Dynasty and Unmasked. Cool. So you'll get to play with Eric and Bruce. I'm taking it from that. Yeah. That's awesome, Brandon. Good for you. And Brandon's one of those guys that's focus too. I watch what Brandon's doing. I'm like, maybe someday I'll get to play some music with Brandon, because I know my buddy Trey has, which is freaking pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And Brandon says, I've played with Ace 3 times, auditioned for Vinny's band, and filled in for Bruce at a Live 3 rehearsals last year. Wish I played with Paul and Gene. Man, you're in that circle, though. Maybe that'll come to fruition here in the near future. That would not everybody gets to play with members of Kiss. The closest I've come to anything Kiss related is my band Midline opened up for Peter Criss. This would be like in 1995. So that's been, well, that'll be 30 years ago coming up. That's, man, where does time go? So that's crazy. And then in the late 90s, Bill LaCoin managed my band for about 2 years. And then he passed away from some surgery complication stuff. So it's pretty crazy. And spending time with Bill and hearing all the crazy Kiss stories. Brandon's driven 7,000 miles since November 12th. So almost a month in. That's more like 2 weeks. No, 3 weeks. November 12th, started in Philly. Noon on a Sunday, got here to... You're in Georgia at 6 p.m. yesterday. Talked to Trey about 15 minutes ago. Nice. Yeah. Brandon and I, too, have watched a lot of pavement go by in my time. Watching the lines on the road. Ding, ding, ding. And when I used to tour quite a bit, which I'd love to do again, if I was driving, I would play these silly little mind games to keep my attention, and I would eat one chip every mile marker I would pass. And so if I drove 200 miles, I knew that I ate 200 chips, if there was 200 chips in a bag. Oh, the silly things that you do to try to keep your mind alert. So how serious do people get about music if it's a hobby or they're a living? And then so the next question I have is, does talent make it happen? Just talent alone? Is that all it takes? Is I just have to be really good at my instrument and then everything will work out? No. I think ability is a must. I think it's definitely a must. But attitude is number one. That's what I tell my students. That's what I tell myself is, yeah, you have to have ability. You have to have a certain skill set, right? And you have to have a great attitude. You have to network. That becomes in that column if this is for your living. It's like, how focused are you being? How serious are you being? But if it's just a hobby, you're probably not really super rehearsed at your instrument. You're amazingly adequate. And believe me, if I'd say that, it doesn't mean that people who only play music for a hobby have no skill set. There's plenty of amazing musicians out there that only do it for a hobby. They've got a really great job, and that's where they live, which is totally fine and totally cool. And they don't worry about the money part of it. But what I see happen sometimes is that you have people working really, really hard at what they do, and they're really, really focused, and things appear to just happen for them. We don't see what's going on behind the scenes, that they've done all this work and those kind of things, and making the phone calls and returning the emails and texts and all of those things. And Brandon's a good example of that, because Brandon's been on the road for a while with his band, and I know the amount of time involved with him putting all that together, because I used to do the same thing for Midline. Brandon says, all the talent in the world gets you nowhere if you don't know anybody. Connections are key. Yeah, 100%. So what I see happen is people do all this work, and then people get like resentful or start being critics, or they start saying, oh, you're just lucky. maybe maybe sometimes luck gets involved, but more often than not, it's all the hard work that gets them there. So you have your hobbyist players, and some of those hobbyist players are not very really accomplished at what they do, and somehow they seem to think that their work is the same as this person's work over here, and then they start complaining about, well, how come they get this gig, and how come they get paid this, and how come this, that, and the other, and how come you're lucky and I'm not lucky, and the world's against me. That's not the case. It's your mindset that's working against you. Just like when I said I built my own prison, I built that because I didn't think that there was a way out. And because I didn't think there was a way out, I built my prison stronger and stronger and stronger because I was trying to make that work, and it was just awful and miserable. So yeah, who is deserving of all of that hard work? The guys that are putting in the time. Mark says it took Chris Stapleton 20 plus years to become an overnight success. Yeah, exactly. So when somebody pops on the scene like that, we think, oh, here's this new artist. I've never heard of them, and now look how they're like superstars. Well, just because I've never heard of them doesn't mean that they didn't do any work. Maybe I just don't pay attention to that world. As I get older, I've discovered that my worldview has been pretty narrow. And some people have a really good education in all these different styles of music and who played in this band and who did this and all of these other things. And when I get around people like that, so my buddy Scott, I see he just popped on. Scott Alexander is one of those guys that has this knowledge and education of all these different styles of music. And when you hear about bands from the 70s or the 80s that came over from England and Britain and those kind of places, I feel like I'm the dumbest person on the planet. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but they're excited, and yeah, this originated from this band and this band. I'm like, have you heard of the band Rush? That was like all I cared about when I was growing up was Rush, and then like the LA strip bands like Motley Crue and things like that. My scope of knowledge is super narrow. Sean says work ethic and putting in the time is paramount. And Scott says, morning, brother, what I've found is that in art, hobby can be really offensive term. Music is like a religion to many players. And yes, I agree, Scott. I agree. I just want to be, and I've said this a few times already in this show, is if you're doing this as a hobby or whatever, I don't mean to be offensive, and I'm glad that Scott brought that to my attention. It's I think generally speaking, if it's not your living, then people think that's a hobby, right? I grew up my whole life riding motocross bikes, and I had brief little moments that I thought I could be a motocross or a supercross star. I quickly learned that I lacked a lot of talent in all of that. And so I just rode for fun. It was a hobby. It was fun to get on a dirt bike and go way too fast and take risks that I shouldn't have been taking, especially like as a drummer. In my 20s, sometimes I would go riding out in the desert and be stupid, and I would be by myself, which is even a bigger mistake. And then I would get home around 1 and shower, and then I would go play a gig. Scott says, like if a parent refers to their teen player as a hobby, it really pisses them off. Yeah, I agree, Scott. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I don't mean to ruffle feathers. Well, maybe I do. There's a lot of incredible musicians out there that do it on the weekends. I think I've mentioned that a few minutes ago anyway. But just catching Scott up to speed in case he just came in, is that, there's really incredible musicians out there that play, and they play a handful of shows throughout a year or whatever, and they're just flat out amazing. and they work at Micron or they sell cars or whatever their day gig is. No cut on them whatsoever. I just think that the two different worlds have two different mindsets. They don't care about the money. Landon's here, Gary's here. Just your mindset towards everything can be so different. Like the decisions that we make going forward. And Scott being a pro musician and being a musician as a living, Scott knows what I'm saying. James, your list makes perfect sense. Everyone has those ingredients, but in different amounts. Some have great talent, but are difficult people. Yeah. Each blend is different, but all can find their perfect combination to succeed. Yeah. And good morning, Rick. What did you say, James? You said some have great talent, but are difficult people. Yeah, and I think that, about a month and a half ago, I was soliciting everybody on what I should talk about, and one of those was dealing with difficult band members. I think I've touched on that a little bit here and there over the couple years I've done this now, but maybe do a deeper dive into that subject. But you got to find your people. You got to find those ingredients that work really well. That's where I feel like with Midline, we've kind of always had that and somebody just mentioned that to me yesterday. Somebody was here. Yeah, he's a student of mine that started playing drums but played guitar in a metal band here in Boise for a while. And he said, ever since I knew Midline, you guys kind of had like this family atmosphere to your band. Like how well you guys got along, and he really felt like that showed on stage when we played. And that wasn't really by design necessarily. I just think, like James said, we all kind of came together, and even with the different lineups that the band has had over the years, that's the family thing has always been a constant. I think I would say a lot of that has to do with Anthony, the singer, because Anthony just has that personality. Anthony is a host wherever he goes. He's always the host of the party, even if it's not his party. Anthony becomes the host. He's just that guy. Anthony tries to make sure everybody's taken care of, and he makes sure that everybody's having a good time, no matter what we're doing. Anthony is that guy, and that's his personality. So yeah, it's been great. Even right now it's me and Anthony and JB, and JB fits in the band like a glove. He's very sarcastic like everybody else, and just fits right in. And now we have James Lancaster playing bass, and it's just such a pleasant working environment with those guys. And we've been there and done that so many times. It's really just everything that we do feels like it's easy. But we've been in that mindset for 30 years. Let me catch up here. So Gary says, it is a great feeling when you can make your entire living, make your whole nut just from music. It's a leap. Yes, it is. And that's the world I'm living in right now. Good morning, Manny. And then Gary said, I had to multitask and get paid as guitarist, tour manager, band leader. I got paid for each job I performed with the artist Billy Currington. The sideman gets paid pretty good at that level as well. Yeah, and Gary, I know that just because you and I have hung out so many times, and I've got to hear those stories. But that's nice of you to put that in there for other people to see. Midline's opened up for a few hundred bands in our time that we've been together, and I noticed that a lot of times a guitarist will be not only the guitarist, but he's the stage manager. he's in charge of merch. He's in charge of a lot of stuff. He's kind of like the guy for everything. He's got a lot of different hats. Yeah. I was that guy for Midline. I always acted as a tour manager, and it was funny because the guys in the band called me the dad of the band. I was the responsible one. Um, yeah, so no, now Scott's got me feeling bad. Scott, you got me worried about the hobby thing. Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows I'm not cutting down anybody that does it as a hobby or just a weekend thing, and you make your $100 or whatever it is that you agree to, and you go off and do those things. Um, but then there's people like myself who, like James had said like a week or two ago when he said influential drummers or inspiring drummers, or I don't remember exactly what you said, James, but you mentioned me and watching. I made a decision in my life that I was going to do this stuff, and then I just put my mind to it and did that. And some of that is attributed to your counseling and encouragement too. James says, your son Christian is a great example of keeping your eyes on the prize and overcoming the hurdles to succeed. It may not be his living right now, but he's a pro. Thanks, James. Yeah, and I agree. My son Christian is, yeah, I agree. That's a good example of not taking no for an answer and working really hard to do what he's doing. And it's fun as a parent to watch your kids do that too. Gary says, I was Papa G on the road. I gigged to spend money at Hobby Lobby. And did you have to keep that tour bus fridge stocked with snacks, Gary? You're the snack guy. I think, is there a budget in the tour like for whatever you keep stocked on the bus? I think there is. I've heard many musicians talk about that, where either with their per diem or their buyout or things like that, they would just go to the grocery store and try to pocket as much money as they could, and then they would have a surplus for the tour bus money. I've heard of people going on trips, or the band goes on go to Disneyland because they had that surplus. It was in the budget, so why not, right? Yeah. So Christian is a good example. When Christian first auditioned for Battalion on snare, it was for the 2019 season. I drove Christian down to the Salt Lake area 4 or 5, maybe 6 different times for camps and audition camps and then rehearsals. And when he first went, I thought, it was apparent my son's skill level was above a lot of what was there. But those were the camps. There's a better name for it than camp. It was a way for people to go and get exposed to what they might want to be in, and so they didn't have the veteran players there. But then when it came down to real audition time, they're going to contract 8 or 9 snare drum players, and they have 40 some show up. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh crap. These other guys have way more experience and ability than what was. The cool thing with Christian is he hung in there, and he was the very last one to cut, and they labored over that decision. And then it was interesting because driving home, Christian started spouting off saying, they don't know what they're doing there. How dare they? Blah. He was really bagging on them because hobby camps. Maybe so, Miguel. Maybe so. Hobby camps. That's funny. I think I'm just going to call it that for now on. So Christian was spouting off that they didn't know what they were doing. He, of course, was really disappointed that he didn't make it. And I told him, I said, time out. You got to stop. I said, these people have been doing this for years, and they have experiences from all these different. I know that you're kidding, Miguel, but I think it's a. I think I'm going to use that term anyway. And I told Christian, I said, what you're going to do is when we get home, you're going to email them and you're going to tell them thank you for this experience, and you're going to let them know that even though that you were cut, if something, like he was the last one cut, so technically he was like first alternate. So when let them know that, hey, if something doesn't work out with somebody, I could be there at a moment's notice. Is there anything I should keep working on so that I can still be prepared if that were to happen? And so that's exactly what he did. And then the people in charge saw that, and they were really impressed by him saying that. And then when it came time for the first rehearsal, the first official rehearsal weekend, I said, now you need to contact whoever it was, I can't remember at the time, ask them if it would be beneficial for you to be there to kind of shadow what was happening. And they said, yeah, you can definitely come. These are the things that we're working on, but please understand that the line is full. We have everybody that we need, and so don't get your hopes up. And so he went, and they were really impressed by that. Now, at that same time, Christian had also been playing bass clarinet, so he could read music really well and had marching experience. And he was going through all of that, and while he was there, the first day he was on snare because the person that was supposed to be there was graduating high school or something, so he wasn't there. But then on the Saturday came along, then he was back to a drum pad, and one of the brass caption heads came over and said, I understand you have experience playing bass clarinet and marching experience, and we need another euphonium player. And if you think that you can play and learn the euphonium, we'll contract you. And that's exactly what happened. So he's calling me. He's like, Dad, I'm going to march battalion. He was so excited. I'm going to play euphonium. And I'm like, what? You're messing with me. He wasn't messing with me. So he marched his first season of drum corps playing euphonium, not even an instrument that he was even thinking about. But that opened the door to a whole new thing. And then 21, 22, 23, he played on snare for battalion and aged out. And this past year, Chip, this past year, my son Ian marched battalion playing contra tuba. And he came in, and when people started to know that he was Ian Fisher, they immediately started quizzing him, are you Christian Fisher's brother? Like, so in the marching world, at least battalion and the people that know that circle know Christian's story and his perseverance that he had and willingness to do what it takes to make it happen. That story is circulated throughout the drum corps community, not just in battalion. And so a lot of people know who Christian Fisher is as a result of that. And because of Christian, people started to know who Ian Fisher was as a result of that. So in some small way, I feel like dear old Dad did something right, which was great. I like the hobby camps thing, though, Miguel. And Miguel, I see, first of all, congratulations that you are playing with Redstone. And how is it, Miguel, that you and I could be in these circles and not play music together? I know when you first moved into town, I was hitting you up about playing with Cliff, and you weren't available. Maybe someday. Sean says bus stock depends on the tour, and it also depends on how big the tour is. Also, the people on the tour split up their rider. There's really a lot of factors. And then Chip is here. Chip. If you go follow Chip Ritter, subscribe to his channel on YouTube, you can see him doing drum solo stuff with sorry, I'm reading at the same time. Yeah, you didn't have time because your work situation was preventing you from playing with Fred Fisher. Chip, why am I spacing on this incredibly famous drummer name? Dang it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Can you see it? Anyway, go subscribe to Chip Ritter on YouTube, and Chip is part of the Drummers Education Connection team. Scott said Miguel went high demand about a day after moving here. Yeah, and I think that Scott, I was talking to you on the phone because we needed a new bass player for Cliff, and you are the one who said you need to hit up Miguel, and so I was messaging Miguel, and it just never came to fruition. And I think it's because of what Miguel just said. Whatever his job was at that time, just he knew he couldn't commit to anything. James says Chip's version of Hot for Teacher is insane. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I watched that yesterday. Maybe it's because Chip posted it yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Miguel says, I was working at a small restaurant that needed me every chance they got. Yeah. That crazy little restaurant. Yeah. Miguel, Scott does open a lot of doors. If Scott believes in you, man, Scott will be he's a great guy to have in your pocket, in your camp, in your circle. I knew of Scott for years before I ever actually met or talked to Scott, except from one time briefly. I think Scott was thinking about drum lessons for his son, and maybe it's because I was far away. I don't know what happened there, but it didn't work out. And Scott reached out to me one time just out of the blue and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. And I think this is when Scott was still touring quite a bit, and said, I have a handful of months off. If you know anybody that might need a bass player here and there. And I was like, well, actually, we do with this thing. And then I had this other opportunity that was coming along that needed a bass player as well. That was more promising. But he was like, well, what's the set list for the other thing? I'm like, just show up and play. It'll be perfect. But the first time I met Scott is when he came walking into this room, and we were working on a different project together, and felt like we really hit it off. And every time I get a chance to play with Scott, it's awesome. Scott and I played with this YouTube tribute band for the Potato Drop one year, and it was the Snowmageddon year, which I can't remember what year that was, like 2016 maybe, or 15. I don't know. It's been a long time ago. And it was like minus 80 degrees outside. It was ridiculously cold. And yeah, that was we got to share that misery together. Anyway, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for hanging. I don't know if I made any conclusions in there, but I just real quick, I'll just hit these highlights one time. Is like between 2017, Scott says, yeah, that's been a while ago. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 7 years ago? I guess I could just put 7 to 7, and I'm bad at math sometimes. Yeah. It was, it hurts your hands thinking about it. Yeah, so, sitting in the drummer position in that cold was, well, it was miserable for everybody in the band, and at those temperatures. I'm serious. It was like minus 18 degrees, and then the wind chill, whatever that was, it was really terrible, terribly cold. And people fight their instruments trying to stay in tune. It's hard to sing in that temperature. They had these patio heaters on the stage, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those. And what had happened is the heat was hitting the roof of the cover of the stage and caused that snow to melt, and then it was dripping on the stage. So like all 3 frontline spots had like this 4 to 5 foot circle of ice. So I think the whole band probably could have benefited from some ice skates during that gig. Yeah, but we did it. A broken propane stage heaters. Yeah, stuff that didn't work. And I want to say, Scott, your memory's probably better than mine. They had like a curtain backdrop up, and I don't know if it was while we were playing or just before we played. They took that curtain down, so any hope of heat remaining on that stage was immediately gone, and they either put up or revealed this like LED backdrop thing. So while we were playing, they had this imagery of like fire going, like a giant fireplace. So it looked warm, but it was not warm. It was that was one of those things I got to share with my friend Scott, and we could commiserate. Gary says that year was miserable. I'm back to playing for a living. Hit me up. Nice. I love that. Okay, I'm just gonna hit these highlights real quick, and then I'm gonna bail and get ready for my day. Tuesday's my long day of teaching. I start at 1 and I end at 9, so I got 8 hours. Just 8 hours means I'll see 16 students today, and that's a blast. That's fun. Music, hobby or living, or either that dangerous word hobby, or some bridge in between, like how serious you are, what your mindset is. Does talent mean that that's all it takes to make it happen? Ability, I think, is a must if you're going to do it for a living. Can you have just one source of income? No, I don't believe so. I should have talked about that. I'll talk about that real fast. Who is deserving, hard work or luck, networking, amateur or pro, and then mindset. So can you have just one source of income? I don't think in today's, at least in my experience, it's possible just to have a living from one source of income, music related. Adaptability, yes, 100%, James, is being able to offer different things. So when I first started down this path, and I was already teaching a few students, I think maybe by this time I had like 15 students, maybe 18. It wasn't 20, I know that. And going back to when I first got on here, I was like, when you start putting the numbers together, it's like, how many students do I actually need to be able to pay my bills and survive? And over the years, my rate has gone up as well on what I charge for lessons. I don't know if I'm the most expensive guy in town or if I'm just the same as everybody. I don't really know. I just base on what I need. So I just worry about myself. But everybody I talked to said, make teaching your number one thing, because that would be like the most obtainable goal in that. And once you have that put together, then start focusing on the other things that you want to do, like networking with people, because still I would like to ultimately be on a really cool tour supporting a big artist. That's my goal. That's still one of my things. And my networking circle keeps growing and growing, and my name has come up in conversation more frequently as I do all of that. So that's a great thing. But that morphed into being able to record drum tracks for people. So I've got that source. And then when I go and I play with Cliff, and I have a decent wage that comes along with that, because Cliff is also working towards this goal. And so the money keeps getting better with that. And so that's a good thing too. Midline's not really a constant. The midline to me, as much as I love it, has become my hobby project, my labor of love project. And I think as far as I can see into the future, I don't think that's ever going to change with that situation. It's a really cool thing that I love to do, and I think everybody in the band's on the same page with that. So, but yeah, being adaptability and finding little things to still have income from music, and not just teaching and recording tracks for people, but the studio, and a big part of that has to do with Mary's willingness to learn how to do all of this stuff, is being able to offer full production stuff for people or videos for people. So I have a great wife in all of that. So yeah, I think you do have to have multiple streams of revenue that you can pull from. And it's a good thing. And going back to, James mentioned that about me a couple weeks ago in his drumming influence things, and that was really cool that he did that. And but yeah, it wasn't anything that happened overnight, like Mark Grubert said. Chris Stapleton, took 20 years to become an overnight success. Gary, the leg is doing much better. The swelling is still there, but it's not as bad as it was. And my next appointment is on Thursday. I'll go see the doctor. And I was told a month ago when I was there that I would be able to start putting weight on that leg and get to being able to walk. Not walking for, or at least not walk. I have a walker, so my left leg has been, and my arms have been doing all the work and dragging my right leg around. I'm tired of that. So I have a personal goal, hoping that works out, to be able to walk unassisted by January 1st. So, man, I highly discourage anybody from breaking their leg. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't break your leg. Don't recommend it. It's, man. That'll change your life. That'll change your life. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the feedback. I love having the discussion and people weighing in. And Miguel, I may come see you at the Sapphire Room. I'll have to see. You're going to come see me next week? I love that. Let's do that. You can see my sad affair with my leg. That would be fun. I look forward to that. Yeah, Gary, you got my number. Just let me know, man. That would be cool. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Thanks for hanging. I will be on every Tuesday this month. I think in 3 weeks from today, I think it's 3 weeks, it'll be Christmas Eve. I'll be here. And then the week after that will be New Year's Eve. And I'll bring a guitar. Awesome. That would be great. So, yeah, I don't plan to stop. And next week will be episode 104. So guess what? That's 2 years of Fred Talk. All right, I'm making you sick because I keep bouncing the computer. Guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.